being recorded. If you need to adjust your hair.
Myself, yeah, fix my hair.
Well, welcome you guys,
Well, thank you.
Ivy Vann and Carol Ogilvy. And you've met Brad Rich and Tim Jennings, both members of our planning board. Tim has actually got a long background here. He was actually a long time ago was our public works director.
Oh, really?
He's been here forever.
He's got a lot of experience with the town. And obviously, I'm Rod Taylor, planning and zoning administrator, what we call land use administrator, also community and economic development for the town. So we really appreciate you guys responding to our RFQ, and would like to just have a quick little session, about a half an hour with you.
Perfect.
And we've prepared some questions so that everybody gets the similar questions, but we will absolutely ask additional questions and clarify and stuff. And feel free to bring up, we'll give you opportunities galore to bring up whatever you want to talk about as well.
Or to ask us questions.
Or ask us questions. So we just want to start out, basically, first question on our list is your bios and your sort of talk about your firm and qualifications of your firm and so forth. So go ahead.
Well, Carol and I have known each other, God, 20 years now. And we've been working together 4-ish years. And so when I got interested in town planning, went ahead and got certified and started working. My first job after I got certified as a planner was I worked for the Congress for the New Urbanism on an American Association of Retired Persons project, where we were working in cities all over the United States, looking at their code from the point of view of how can we make these places better places for people of all ages, which was a big thing for the AARP. So that was the first work that I did once I got certified. And then Carol and I have been working together. We have been doing master plan work, and then once there was HOP work, we've been doing code audits and housing needs assessments and lots of public engagement. And then I've just finished the biggest project that I've done by myself was I just finished the form-based code writing for Newmarket, which I sent you a link to in our response to your RFQs. So you can take a look at that work. And that was a really, really fun project. And I think we're going to be able to go ahead and finish form-based code for the whole town of Newmarket, which would be
The entire town, wow.
Yeah, we did.
I lived there for 4 years during school.
Yeah, I did the Main Street.
Yeah.
The Main Street spine, and then I did the close-in neighborhoods to the Main Street. That was what we did this past year.
Yeah.
And then they're hoping to do the whole town
Wow.
with form-based code, which is great. Form-based is such a good fit for New England towns in terms of letting them stay the way they are.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's me. Yeah.
Carol, much fun.
And so I have been a land use planner in New Hampshire since 1987. And most of my work has been in the public sector. I worked for the Regional Planning Commission in the southwest corner for 14 years. And then I went to the state planning office only for 1 year, and then was recruited to Peterborough, where I was community development director for 10.5 years. And I left there in 2013, thinking that, it was time to scale back a little bit because I was doing, side jobs while I was working for Peterborough, with MRI and a few other smaller towns in my region. And I thought, well, I'll just step away from a full-time job and just, have these little part-time jobs. Well, however many years, 11 years later, I'm as busy as I've ever been. So I just keep doing land use planning, a lot of the things that Ivy has mentioned. The last 2 years, we've worked with 7 towns with these HOP grants. So that has kept both of us very busy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the future of that program is, but at any rate, so we've got some experience now with working with this program, understanding what they're looking for and how the public engagement process in particular, Ivy has got that, honed. So And I've been doing a lot of the master plan work, and then we kind of share the audits of the codes and so forth, so.
Right, I depend on Carol to know what the state statute says about your site plan, and your subdivision regs and things like that.
Mhm.
And I have to say that I just love writing zoning ordinances. It's just
Yeah,
one
we
of my,
both
Wow.
one of my,
God bless you.
Yeah, both of
one
us
of my
do.
favorite things.
Yeah,
It
no,
really.
we both love writing code.
Yeah,
You
so,
know, it's
yeah.
a niche, but it's ours.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yeah.
You
So,
guys want to take a question?
Yeah, so you talked a bit about form-based. Is there ever a case where, I guess it's a two question, two subparts. Is there ever, you ever run across a case where, form-based was not appropriate? And how do you handle, residents that push back on form-based?
The way that I do form-based is, it's not the form-based that you would get from Andreas Dwani. If you hired, Dwani Plater Zyberg to come in, they
Yeah.
had kind of invented the whole idea. What I tend to do is to try to match the code to what you already have and love.
Yeah.
And so, and we don't talk about architecture. We talk about how tall is the building? How wide is it? Where's the front door? Where are the windows? Where do you put the parking? And how does it sit on the lot?
Huh.
Those are the things that if you can manage those things, then you can get a really good place.
Yeah.
Those are the things that really affect how a street feels.
It's a balance, because you want to attract
Exactly.
developers, right? And
Yeah.
people to invest, but you don't want to make it too tough that.
Right,
they run.
exactly. And I will tell you that developers love form-based code, particularly the kind of sort of stripped down form-based code that I write, because it provides them with certainty.
Yeah.
If I do this thing, then it will be okay.
Yeah.
And the neighbors like it because
Yeah.
we know how big the building can be, because that's the thing that people worry about the most is the scale.
Yeah.
And is the building going to be out of scale? So with form-based, we can reassure the developer that as long as they follow the rules that we've established, it's going to be pretty straightforward for them. For the neighbors, this is what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And for the town, because you don't have those people thrashing at each other, it makes the whole process much smoother.
Yeah.
And less contentious.
Interesting, thank you.
So,
Let's see, some examples of, well, no, yeah, what changes would you suggest that we might want to make to our scope of work? Or our general plan going forward?
well, Carol and I were talking as we were driving up here. We thought your master plan was probably the best one we ever saw. We thought it's really, really good. And yeah,
We're
really,
about to adopt phase two.
it's very impressive.
very, very impressive. And so the recommendations that are in your master plan that are in the scope of work that we responded to, we think are really good. The idea of looking at your accessory dwelling unit ordinance, looking at the possibility of allowing small, multifamilies, more small multifamilies, things like that, I thought were really good suggestions and appropriate for a town the size of Enfield. Carol, you got it?
No, I think that.
And from your reading of the master plan, and I assume you might have had a moment to drive around a bit, perhaps you just got here, but, what do you think of our town?
I think one of the things I liked best about the way the master plan was organized was the whole idea that you've identified your villages. And you've not only identified your villages, but you've established that that's where you want to see new development. You want to lean into your village, because financially for a town, development in a compact area like a village is economically your best bet. Because one of the big expenses for all towns is their road network.
Yeah.
So anytime that you can use your existing infrastructure more, more efficiently by allowing more density that's more historically appropriate density, the better that is for your town's bottom line.
So
Plus,
you've got a lot of opportunity here.
yeah,
we
you
think,
do.
a
Well, it's
lot.
especially important in Enfield because of the town water and sewer.
Exactly.
You know,
Yes.
The villages
Yeah.
or the main villages on town water and sewer.
Yeah.
Exactly. And having more historically appropriate development in that village is going to bring down the price of those systems
Right.
for the people who live there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just math. It costs $5 a foot to salt, sand, plow, ditch and mow a centerline foot of road in New Hampshire every year. So when you have development spread out, you know, it's hard to get the tax revenue to maintain that road, with scattered development.
Yeah.
If you can gather it, you'll come a lot closer to not going broke.
Yeah, well, what we've heard from a lot of the residents is that they're okay, I would phrase it that way, with higher density development in the villages.
Mhm.
But at least from the people I talk to, once you get into the rural 1 acre, 5 acre, they don't want anything to change there.
Yeah, that's typical.
That's very typical, and it's not a bad way to approach things. Because as I say, from the point of view of, and I feel like people fall into kind of two camps as to where they want to live. They either want to live on a dirt road with no neighbors, which is fine. I've done that. Carol does it now. Or they want to live in a walkable place where they can get a cup of coffee.
And you can offer those
Both.
choices, and
Yeah.
that's the most important thing,
Yeah.
is that people have choices.
Yeah.
What's the right amount of public engagement?
Oh, Lordy, I wish I knew the answer to that. Enough so that people feel vested and so that you're getting a broad enough section of the population talking. I mean, one of the things I noticed in your master plan is that you acknowledged that most of the responses to the public engagement you did for the master plan were people who were older, landowners, had been here a significant amount of time. So that what that tells, and that is really, really typical. I mean, that's what we see all the time. So what that tells me is that going forward, we need to be sure to go where there are other people that don't fall. We want to talk to those people, but we also want to talk to the people who are not them.
Yeah, we spend time trying to get renters.
Yeah,
Because
renters are hard. Renters are hard. If you come at it from the parent side, sometimes you can pick up renters that way, and that's a thing that I'd want to explore here. But yeah, I think that going to where they are is always better than trying to get them to come to you.
Yes.
And I've done both. The reason I can't come to planning board tonight is I'm going to Chesterfield to do a presentation. And we've been getting about 35 people, which is not bad for a town the size of Chesterfield, but it's the
When you say
same.
going to them, how so?
Oh, I'm going to their public space and I'm going to do a presentation and I'm expecting people to come to me. I'm not going down to the coffee shop and talking to the guys drinking coffee, although that is on my list of things to do.
Sure.
Or going to the PTA, or
Yeah,
going to
we
the
do all
library.
those things.
Yeah, going to the
Everything we can.
everything that we can think of. I went to, in Chesterfield, for example, they had a craft show. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, I went to the craft show and I had a little
That's what we
booth.
did too.
Yeah, well, that's what you have to do.
And the farmer's
lot.
market.
The
and
farmer's market,
That's what we did. It
No.
was exactly the farmer's market. There was 8 sessions.
The
Yeah,
senior citizens
exactly.
lunch.
yeah, senior
Although-
citizens lunch.
Yeah.
And, I will go, when we were working in Winchester, I went to the Lions Club and I went to the Rotary and I went to the Historical Society. I mean, anytime, it's the joke, anytime one or two are gathered together, we try to show up at least once.
So in our case, I'm I'm thinking here of the audit.
Yeah,
I think that hot people require,
yeah, a code audit.
and it's interesting that I think it was you talked about how the audit would look to see if there's clarity, if there's inconsistencies, if a number of things that, well,
I'm afraid for them to read it.
we know it's unclear. There's lots of inconsistency.
I'll tell you what Carol and I said, when the RFQ came out. I called Carol up and I said, I want to work for these people because they have acknowledged that they have a problem. In your proposal to the hot people, you said, our code is old and it's not working for us. Our site plan regs are old and they're not working for us. And we agreed, oh my gosh.
Yeah, we have never seen a grant application like this. This was astonishing.
Yeah, we loved it.
As it, listen to this.
Right?
So, and we didn't seem to get that message across in prior attempts at this process, that we want a new
Yeah.
ordinance.
Oh, no, we got that.
Okay.
That's why we applied, is
So-
because that seemed really exciting for us.
So tell me, do you have like and I'm not talking about the specific land uses that are really particular to a town, but all of the other elements to the zoning ordinance, do you have like a model ordinance?
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe not form-based.
well, so because I became a land use planner in the last 10 years, I was brought up on the transect. So the transect is a way of thinking about how places are organized. So T1, transect area 1, that's the rural places. That's natural places. And then T2 is where you begin to have houses on 5-acre lots. And then you come in a little closer and things get a little denser. And then you get all the way down. In New England, we hardly ever get past T5, which is town center. And so I think about it in that kind of way. What kind of place does this part of your town want to be? The other thing that I use is there's a open source code called the place code. And the place code is a way of sort of organizing that idea of, we go from the town center to the rural district and what's appropriate in each of these places. And you calibrate that to the town you're working in. I mean, I'm working in Newmarket where a 3-story brick building in their T5 town center is perfectly appropriate. The T5 town center for Chesterfield, well, first of all, they don't have one. They have, they get T4, they got a village. That 3-story brick building would be totally inappropriate there. So that's how I think about it, is that, going from nothing to going to town and all the ways along the, and what are the things that make town and that make the rural district the rural district.
But we also recognize that not everything fits every town.
Absolutely.
So I think of it in terms of, so here's sort of the parameters, and these are the things that should be in a zoning ordinance. And you can perhaps have one portion of it be form-based if it's a very rural town, and with a small downtown or center, you could use that approach for that section, but not use that for your more rural towns. But then, there are the issues, there's certain things that we know need to be in a zoning ordinance. And then other things will really depend upon what we find out as we work with the town. What are the issues that you have? I mean, I've worked with towns that, they needed to have special provisions for all kinds of uses that you would never see someplace else, campgrounds or adult uses, for example. Once upon a time, that was a thing that everyone was concerned about. And now, thanks to the internet, it's not an issue anymore. Nobody wants that in their ordinances anymore. So, some people are concerned about, public facilities and others are not. So those are things, we work through that as we go along. But I think, within the parameters of, this is your basic zoning ordinance, these are the things that should be there. And then these other things we work out as we work with the town.
And, some town, I worked in a town that had a fairground. And so we made a special district for the fairground. So,
Yeah, our ordinance has the growing of grain and fodder. all through it.
okay.
Oh, no kidding.
I love that. That's so, dated at this point, but
Any experience with lakeshore districts?
Carroll has a lot.
Yes. A
Like
lot.
last
They're
month's
difficult. They're very
We have a
difficult.
lot of lakes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we noticed.
But we've also thankfully learned a lot over the years, and thanks to DES, we have a lot of, I would call it support. Some people might not, but there's a lot of knowledge about how to deal with lakefront properties now that we didn't have years ago.
Yeah.
So I think that makes.
Especially stormwater and
Exactly. And that makes our job easier.
Yeah.
So when the landowner might not be happy, the answer is, well, that's what the state requires, so.
have you had success with the residents of the lakeshore approving lakeshore districts or overlays?
I have not worked with any town that's adopted a new district. All of the towns that I worked with, they've been on the books for years. Now, we've made changes.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the, I think, better changes that I made with the town recently, because they also had a lot of lakefront, and we're getting applications constantly to the zoning board for variances, because of course, as soon as someone wants to do something, it doesn't comply, they need a variance. So the planning board and I spent about a year working on the shoreline protection ordinance to create a conditional use permit process, and also have kind of a tiered approach with actually a diagram and a sketch. So this is what you can do if you're within 50 feet or, out to 250 feet, capturing the whole protected shoreland. And these are the steps that you take. And this is where you need town approval. This is where you'll need state approval. And it's worked really, really well.
Okay.
They no longer go to the zoning board. They either get their approval with DES and get their building permit, or they also come into the planning board for their conditional use permit process, which I love. And it just has made everyone's life so much easier. And it's a better project because all of them are doing stormwater management now.
Yeah.
Because they know if they want the permit, they've got to do a stormwater management plan.
Right.
And
that's
it's
kind of a
really
quid pro
great.
quo. We'll work with you if
Yeah.
you work with us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And you want to plant some natives, then, all the better.
Yeah,
Interesting.
exactly.
Yeah.
New Hampshire hop, obviously you guys both have lots of experience. You have some,
Yeah.
some lessons
Seven
learned that you
towns.
want to share, anything, even anecdotes, we'll take them. And we love to commiserate.
Well, we always love to work with a town who wants us to be there.
Yes.
Because we have had occasional instances where we were summoned and then we're not sure why you sent for us. So we're
Yeah.
thrilled to respond to an RFQ where it's clear that the town is enthusiastically vested in the process.
But I
At
think,
least the planning board, not so sure. Residents.
No, of course, and that's always going to be the case.
Well, I'm sure you've seen it. We have a challenge where, half the population, it seems, really is open to change and then the other half does not want any change.
oh, yeah. And
That's the noisy half.
And they are the noisy half.
yeah, they are. And one thing that we have seen in, I think every town but one, is that even when the planning board is on board with this, and obviously they put in the application and they want the project, housing continues to be such a difficult issue. And there are some people that will just never, ever acknowledge that I worked with a town once, they had beautiful elementary school. And everyone was just in a panic because the student population was down by half and they're at risk of losing their school. So I was working with the town on creating a little village district around this horrible intersection they had in the middle of town and, create some mixed use and some, residential development so people could live and the kids could walk to school. Could not get it through. The planning board had, meetings up to the 11th hour, and then people showed up with their pitchforks, and that was it. The planning board caved, it never went anywhere. So those are things that,
We have a real serious issue in Enfield. In 1990, the census, the average number of people per household was 4.7. It is now 1.7.
that is really low.
And I mean, we pretty much expect to see an average of 2 in a household now.
Wow, that's low.
But 1.7 is really low. And what that means, of course, is that you need more housing because you have more
You
households.
need more housing and needs to be affordable
And it needs to not be
And
too big.
smaller,
and
Yes.
smaller.
yes.
So I mean, there are things we have done that have helped. And that I mean, to go back to the whole form-based code that I did for Newmarket, one of the things we did was when we're doing this kind of work now, the good thing is we're not responding to a project. So the conversation is less fraught than when you're responding to a project. So one of the things that I do everywhere is I have a deck of cards that has buildings on it. And I give the people the deck of cards. You probably saw examples of that in our application because they're so pretty. So anyway, we give them the deck of cards and we say, okay, do a quick and dirty sort. Okay in my town, not okay in my town. Not necessarily next door to me, we'll get to that, but let's just do okay in our town, not okay in our town. So they sort. We move the no's out of the way. We're done talking to them. We will not talk about them again. So then we take the yeses and we collate the responses to, what buildings were people okay with.
It's an interesting approach.
And then after we've done that, I have them take those little Post-it note flags and write the name of the buildings they liked on the Post-it note flag and put them on the map. Show me where this building would be okay in your town. And by letting them, it gives them, again, it's that whole ownership of the project,
Well, the buy-in is.
Yeah, it really improves the buy-in. I am not going to claim to you that it will solve all your problems, but it is an approach that has been remarkably effective. The other thing is to think about the opposition piece. So if you think about moving things this way. So you've got people over here that are really opposed and are never going to change their mind. You've got people here that are, they don't love it, but they're not going to have a tantrum about it. You've got people here who don't love it and are probably going to be okay with it. And then you've got people here who really want it. So these people over here, we may never convince.
Right.
But what we have to do is shift it just a little bit this way. And we do that by having all those conversations and talking about, what is it that you would like to see? What is, what do we want? And that does help. It does help.
Yeah, I was just at a community forum in a town a few Saturdays ago, and the facilitator had people do the dot voting when they came in. And so I think the 5 topics that we'd identified was, rural preservation, of course, conservation, housing, and, business development. And I thought it was interesting, and he had them do the dot voting coming in, then we had our session and the dot voting on the way out. And housing on the exit poll had a higher percentage of people who thought it was an issue than when they came in to the session.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's
Yeah.
progress.
Well, we've always thought, what we do is try to gather input, but we also need to do an educational sort of, you gotta help people understand.
Yeah.
Well, the HOP
Yeah.
thing, I will say that one of the great things about the HOP program is that it requires, as part of the program, that you make a plan. And so I've been doing these things that I call housing camp. So I roll into town and, you've already done a lot of this work, but we start by having a big meeting that everybody gets a postcard and invites them to, and we provide food. And at that meeting, we talk about their housing issues. It's all about them. And so we start there. And, we say, okay, think about where you live now. How well does it work for you? Is it a good sort? Is it okay? And then I say, okay, now think 10 years ahead. How well is that place gonna work for you? Do the math, say that number out loud. And then,
Yeah.
we collect all that information and then we say, okay, who's not in the room? What do you think they're looking for? And how do we talk to them about this issue? And then I always ask them, what's the most beautiful village you can imagine? What does it have? And that's the first meeting. So we start centering it on the people. And again, we have the advantage of we're not being pressed by a project.
Right.
And then after that, I do these housing camps where I talk about, okay, how did we get into this fix of needing more housing? And, and usually I talk for about half hour and then I listen to them respond to what I said. And, it's pretty informal. And I do 4 of those. And then the last one I do is always, okay, based on your town and what I've heard from you, here are some kinds of housing that you could add that would fit in your town and answer the needs that you've identified for us. And in Enfield, since you want a whole new ordinance, that information is really valuable.
Yep.
Because that will inform the way that we write the code.
So we're up against our 30 minutes, right?
I was
Yes,
just gonna
thank you
ask that.
guys.
So
much.
do you guys have any questions for us? I mean, this is your opportunity to ask us anything that you are unsure of or clarification.
No, we went and we did our homework and went and read everything we could find online. And I will say that, we were really impressed with that application.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity of having us.
Good to meet you. I learned quite a bit just